shore, relentless in the war. The legions in our hearts, shed waters in our voice. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. The world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking, with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners. The question, ladies and gentlemen, of having special rights, special exclusions and rights, generally things of the sort that give you a special privilege, things that grant you a special access, and also the reverse of that, right? The reverse of not having privilege. These are things that, shall we say, occupy our minds. These are things that occupy the space of social interactions,
society, culture stuff. Ain't that right? Stuff, Joan?
Yeah, privilege is everyone's favorite word these days.
Also, yeah, also everyone's favorite word these days. And perhaps maybe we can do a little bit of vaccination and inoculation. A vaccine, another popular word these days. Of the word, maybe we could suck the venom out of the word, because I just kind of gave an I said I just described privilege in like a paragraph. Like I was like, access granted uniquely, specially, omissions, or shall we say exemptions, all to your benefit. You're not exempted from like the pie, right? It's usually you're exempted from the war, that kind of a thing. That's when it would be a privilege, right? So things that generally redound to your benefit, but are not equally granted to all. And via some kind of arbitrary means, some luck of the draw, you have these special right? Some kind of a special access. And I think that whether you call it privilege or not, it is a concern of us, of ours, right? As human beings.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
You're not buying it.
yeah. I mean, this, like being born with privilege, right? Is I think it's a lie.
All right, all right, all right, all right.
I think sometimes
I
you can earn the privilege. Yeah, you can definitely
mm,
earn privilege.
okay. So in the case of, okay, would I rather be? Oh, there is a society. Okay, there's racism in the society. Would I rather be a white guy or a fat, ugly, pimply white guy? In other words, so since you wiggle out and go to a spiritual high ground about no one is born pretty. Okay, I got okay. Oh, what I'm saying is this question that I asked you: do I want to be a black guy or a fat, ugly, white, pimply guy? You gotta weigh these things because you're like, because you see the absence of privilege or perhaps certain kinds of discriminatory things, right? In this case, that will redound not to your benefit, right? So, isn't that kind of thing with regards to our identity a concern for human beings? Are you frozen or am I frozen? I think. I think it is the. Ladies and gentlemen in the chat, Gail Lockett in the chat, and everyone else. Okay, so it is just Joan that is frozen then. Then I will. Why don't you hop back in, Joan? Why don't you hop back in? I will drop you off. Let me see here. Shout out to Blind Guy, his wife, their life. Shout out to Shozan in the house. Shozan, what's up? It has been a while. It has been a while. Adult supervision in the house. Nicer in the house. Wallace again in the house. So before Joan comes back, we're talking about special access. We're talking about special rights. We're talking about a certain lubrication, a certain lubricant, a social lubricant, if you will, right? And we were trying to see if we can at least have some common ground. Hey, you back there, Joan?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
It happens. We're trying to see if we
What
can
did I
have some
miss?
common ground. Nothing, just kind of reiterating the question I'm about to ask you now for the third time. But the whole question of special access and lubricants that we will see. Oh, would I want to be this type? I think that'd make it easy for me to get in here, or would I want to be this type? That is not a crazy topic to have on the table, insofar as we're talking about human interactions and so on and so forth, right?
Right, right. I mean, I definitely see how, some people have the privilege and then where some seems like they don't, but it really just depends on where they are in society. Because I'm sure there's some societies where they don't see that as privilege. It's, and there's some where it's like, yeah, everyone in society sees you as privileged because of this and that and that. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that, that is the way it is. I mean,
you okay? So you see what you're doing, Joe, now, because what you hopped up, you hovered. I don't know if this is mansplaining or not. Maybe I'm enacting my mansplaining privileges right here, and I'm like, hey, Joan, what you just did was this. But anyways, so you kind of hovered above. Okay, you hovered and you started looking at different cultures, right? Okay, you did that move. I know that. I know you. So, but for some reason, your camera. Anyways, maybe we'll get over there. But so far, you're here. But you froze for a second there again. But rather, before you hover above, let's recognize two things about that. Number one is, no, the trouble is on the ground, right?
Right. Yeah.
And number two, not everybody has the ability to hover above.
Mm-hmm.
In reality,
yeah.
As a matter of fact, well, and I don't just mean, I don't mean all just like, in terms of like some kind of a I just mentally / spiritually, not everybody has that habit of breaking down and reaggregating contexts in order to reevaluate and have meaning in whatever you're saying, right? But let's come back to the ground, okay?
Okay.
Now, if you're on the ground and you're like, should I be a black guy in racist, white supremacist America? Or shall I be a fat, pimply, ugly white guy, right? These are real questions and they have real consequences on the ground. Even you acknowledge, it may suck and so on and so forth because you still have to live on the ground. But what are your thoughts with regards to these kinds of things? Is it not legitimate fodder for conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this question so many times before. I mean, if I had to, I mean, should I choose one or the other? I don't know.
But you have pros and cons that you look at, right?
Right. Because even though, like, let's say I choose to be the chubby, pimply white guy, I could always choose to lose weight and get rid of my pimples.
Yeah, you see, you went there. You're like, hey, I'm gonna sneak in there through the white side of town, and I'm gonna revamp. It's a fixer-upper. It's a fixer-upper, but I'll fix this up.
Yeah,
and then I can skate through in white supremacist America. But so that's the general idea. Obviously, we're kind of, because again, the word privilege. Oh, these days, privilege, the word, so on and so forth. And speaking of context, so what we were doing now also is we wanted to take the word out of its current context and look at the thing to which it points out of its current context too, and not just talk about like, because now when you take it into, let's say, the realm of pretty, tall, short, white, black, blah, 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 if you can then become, long nail privilege, thick skin privilege, hazel green eyes versus blue turquoise. In other words, there can be value ascribed to all kinds of things. We are in marketplaces all the time, and there's always a value for something. And then when it comes to our personal identity, these kinds of value can be ascribed, and you can kind of dissect it in many different ways. Why did I have to even say it that way? What I'm saying is, if we bring it now to the current context, it is dissected in ways that say some particular group has power over you, and this power is represented by the privilege that they have. And that we're going to review a video, and it's about pretty privilege. So I wanted to start by talking about privilege. Okay, but now let's talk about pretty privilege, okay? What are your thoughts about that? Because you said no one is born, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, some people are born pretty. Some people are, let's get you on the record on pretty privilege.
Pretty privilege. I would say in today's society, where in my society, I mean, the bubble community I'm in, I guess I could say I have pretty privilege, but I didn't always have that. It really I mean, when I was young, I didn't have what they call pretty privilege. I mean, that wasn't even a thing, like, okay, it was either you're ugly or you're pretty.
Either you're ugly or you're pretty, and you were not one of the pretty girls. You were not one of the pretty girls. You were not the hot girl in the middle of campus.
No, not in high school. No, nobody asked me to prom.
You bloomed later and started. You recognize the difference in you recognize. Okay, let me be. I'm asking you to be candid, so let me be serious in this. In my craving of your indulgence here, to say you do recognize the difference in having that versus not having that. Whether or not you decide to ascribe much ego or not to it, or if you feel like hovering to your spiritual place again, just come and let's stay down on the ground for a little bit.
I know it's hard.
I know. I know, but we can do this together. We can do this. It's not easy for me either. Okay. Maybe you could question me. Maybe you can hit me with, you can be like, hey, how about you come down in the mud with me? But point is, you've seen it, and it could just be a yes or no. You've seen, okay, well, I can use my pretty privilege in one way or the other, and I can kind of see how it works. And you've observed, okay, at least you're an observing person, and you would say that it's true. So far, we have got to admit that the idea of having special access and so on and so forth, the idea of, do I want to be a black man or pimply, fat, ugly white guy, right? You got to look at these things. You got to kind of like think there's a problem to be solved, the issues because of real time, on the ground preferences that are given and lack thereof. And then there's this whole pretty thing. And we're going to review a video and we're going to talk about it. We're going to go further from here. Shout out to Adult Supervision and everyone in the chat. Shout out to Sir Ism in the house. He says, big Ike, big ism in the house with the schism. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to review a video. And we got Sister George in the house. We have Sister George in the house. So I think I clicked the pesky button this time. So let me go ahead and try. Now, this is a video from Stefco. We have reviewed one of her videos before. As I said, I think she's a great content creator. Okay. Very candid and she's a great reporter, I think. Very transparent in the way she puts things out there. And as I always like to say, this is not about it personally for her, is it, Joan? Right? We're not. Yeah, I think that if she's putting good content out there and people appreciate it, then we are allowed to comment, as we have already comment on a valid topic, and we established the validity of the topic earlier on, right? By saying, hey, these guys are pretty blah, blah, blah. And she made a video on it, so let's check it out. Let's see what Stefco has. This video is called I Do Not Have, okay? I don't have pretty privilege, and it sucks. You see? Fair use. You hear the sound, huh?
YouTube, welcome to my channel. Today's video, I am going to be talking about a subject that enters my mind a lot, unfortunately. And I wanted to speak about it honestly somewhere because I feel like it's not popular to address it honestly. The subject that I'm talking about, if you saw the title of this video, is pretty privilege. And for anybody who doesn't know, the concept of pretty privilege is that you basically get treated better in life the more attractive you are. I think I've always been aware that it's out there. I've always been aware that, people, specifically women, can use their looks as currency as they move through a patriarchal society. They can use it to get better mates. They can use it to get.
Okay, so as we begin, let's try to address something that she has said already. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but I think it's part of the whole construct here when it comes to the whole pretty privilege. She said, moving through a patriarchal society. Now, let's take one step off the floor, okay? Flying, yeah, okay, Joan, stay with me. One step off the floor would say, well, there are going to be games that are being played on the ground, and these games will accord value or not based on some kind of attribute that you have, right? You're born here, you're born this race, you're born this tall, you're born that short, blah, 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 based on some games, right? There's a game of class, for example, where ethnicity may be a big fact. Oh, lighter skin, better class, kind of, you're treated a certain way. There's game of the sexual marketplace, which I think this one bears upon heavily, right? The sexual marketplace, therefore, okay, preferences, blah, blah, blah. They're all games that have to do with intelligence. They're games that intermingle all these, right? So point is, just one step above, we're like, okay, games being played. Let me look at the different games, how I stack on the board in these different games, because I shout out to Jordan Peterson for, one of the whole basic notion, which we all know anyways, of you're also privileged in other areas, or you're an oppressor in other areas, right? Blah, blah, blah. But the game of the sexual marketplace now becomes a salient point here, because she's saying, why does it have to be patriarchal?
I know.
Is patriarchy necessary for pretty privilege? Go. You're going to need to be our decryptor of postmodernism today. Is patriarchy necessary for pretty privilege? I would show my hand a little bit. I would say not necessarily that these things can be decoupled, because the sexual marketplace is what you're talking about. Therefore, men come into the picture. But go ahead. What do you think?
Patriarchy. Yeah. It just sounds like an excuse to, I don't know, like not come to terms with certain things. I mean, yes, if I want to look at our society as patriarchal, if I have her same views, yes, pretty privilege obviously gets the men, gets them ahead in the dating game and the
Mm-hmm.
having a family and just being able to move forward in the traditional way of having a family, like just getting married, having a family and all that. I mean, obviously the pretty privileged are ahead in that game. I mean, however, as you had brought up before, there are solutions to these
to these maladies.
So yeah.
I like that you put it in the way of in the tradition, in the game of nature, which to which tradition tends to closely lie, and perhaps there's a blurring of the line between cultural evolution and natural evolution, and tradition and versus nature, nurture, blah blah blah. But in that whole thing, the pretty privilege is very much aligned with that. So if the patriarchy is also part of the natural order, ever since we were lobster with the serotonin and all that good stuff, then the patriarchy and, in other words, why? Because there's a reason why I'm stopping here, is because in a certain sense, it is the crux of the whole issue, because we have to look at the game being played and talk game theoretically about it. So what would you therefore say if pretty women are not inherently going to get ahead in the sexual marketplace? Forget how the sexual marketplace now then ties into other things. What will be the communism? How do you, you get, because even in Plato's Republic, it's kind of funny, because Plato's Republic, obviously we know what Plato's Republic is, but, a book written by Plato, where Socrates goes around having conversations about the forming of the just society, the good society, if you will. But in Plato's Republic, it even talks about having, the younger men service the undesirable women. Like, it's like, it's it's the service. It's being a what's the word? It starts with a C, anyways.
What's the word?
It's gonna bug me, but it's about that kind of civic. It's your civic duty, a civic duty to go and pleasure the women that are not so fortunate, and so in other words, that will be the alternative, right? Or what do you have? What could make things more equal? Do you desire more equality? Do you want to give up your pretty privilege, Joan?
Oh man, I worked really hard for my pretty privilege.
Hey, like I defended it. I like that.
Well, I mean, if let's say I lost my pretty privilege, like maybe I got really fat or whatever, and I mean, what would be the solution, right? And then I just have to seek out, like, maybe the not so privileged men, the ones that have trouble finding women, maybe the unattractive or overweight, or but they are willing to be with somebody and start a family, or just have a partner. I mean, there's someone for everybody. That's what I think. Yeah,
I see. So if you lost your pretty privilege, you would go and you would just look again at the game as we talked about, right? So
yeah, I mean, I would look for who's, I guess, would be my equal, or I don't know, or I mean, so if I lost my pretty privilege, does that mean like And I mean, it could mean I could also still have a lot of money.
Hey, you have a lot of money, and maybe you don't want to be tied down. Maybe you want to be a woman that travels to Belize every now and then, pays money for Julio and them to get the job done nice and well, and then come back and run your mega corporations.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, I know younger guys would totally go for wealthy older women. There's movies about that.
There you go. So you're okay. Now, we talked about the fact that not everybody can jump off the ground, even up to the mountaintop where you wanted to hide away in the beginning. But even to all people also have a problem in the intermediate level, this kind of game theoretic level, this level of like, okay, cool. Let's try to disaggregate what we're talking about here. And why did you bring up patriarchy when you're talking about pretty privilege? Are they necessary? Because there is a game of sexual marketplace value whereby I don't think a patriarchy is necessary in order for people to be attracted to an hourglass figure and or whatever, right? So it's that is interesting, but let's go on here, because I think that patriarchy thing, because I think that the way that it may be aligned, obviously, is number one by the tradition thing, which you mentioned, right? By the whole, well, patriarchy is kind of rooted in this kind of tradition and this nature thing. Really, even what do you mean nature? Men can give birth to or whatever, and transgender women are women. I shouldn't have used that word. Shout out to the algorithm. I was talking about Decepticons. Decepticons are women, Transformers, that is, and all that kind of stuff, right? So let's see where she goes with it, because I think that all that being said, I'm still quite intrigued and interested in seeing how she runs this game here. Fair use, ladies and gentlemen.
Get jobs that regular looking females, regular looking women, I hate that I said females, who I think I am, regular looking women could never get, like being a hostess at an upscale club or, things of that nature. It didn't really bother me until I got a little older and I started to take stock of different things that I didn't have in my life, which I think we do all the time. People compare themselves to other people. It happens. And I started to just think about all the things in my life that probably would have been a little bit easier if I had some pretty privilege. So I want to make something clear before I go forward. I am not at all saying in this video that I find myself unattractive. I actually think of myself as a okay looking person, and I can really dial it up, when necessary. Here, by the way, is a picture of me celebrating my most recent birthday.
All right.
Yeah.
But pretty privilege is not something that
we'll have to rewind that at some point.
Can decide that you have, if that makes sense. Like a lot of privileges, it's something that society just gives you based on what the systems of society already are, like before you even got there. So no matter how confident I might be, no matter how much I might spend on a certain type of wig or a certain makeup application style, I'm never going to have pretty privilege. And it does bother me, and I wanted to be honest about it. I think so often, especially with Black women, we're told to just, keep your head up, sis. Don't drop your crown, sis. Oh, no, not you, sis. You're strong. You're beautiful.
Okay, there are a couple of things going on here. There is the one thing about it bothers me. I will not have, and I don't have it. First of all, shout out on the candor and perhaps a certain level of self-awareness of like, oh, I'm looking at the game. I know I can dial this up in a notch. She's like, okay, she's saying, oh, I'm an adjustable 6 or I'm an adjustable 5 or whatever. By the way, that is an adjustable 5 is a 5 that can go to up to a 7 because not every 5 can, because these subtleties are important, right? Like not every 5 can get dulled up to a 7, and not every 6 can get it dulled up to an 8. So if you got that if you got that extra whatever in your bag, but anyway, so she's looking at the game and she's very candid and self-aware about all that kind of stuff. There is, however, the idea of, let's go internal now for a second. There is this idea that if we had something, we would be satisfied. Right? which is, and in and of its face, it immediately sounds rational and also crazy because we know ourselves, right? We're like, oh, have something to satisfy, then that makes sense. There is a need for X. You take the round peg and you fill it in the round hole. But we know as human beings, that's not how it works, right? Or as biological animals, the frame is going to reset and you're going to need the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. It's almost like, people in the natural world living in Bali somewhere, being natural farmers, are dreaming of robots that can do their work rather than them have to be in these rice paddies or something, right? And the people with the robots are like, oh my God, look at how beautiful they are in the rice paddies. You know what I mean? Always doing this thing of wanting the opposite and thinking somehow it's going to. Any kind of comments on that aspect before we go further with her, well, as Black women thing?
Right.
You gonna speak as a Black woman, Joan, or is it? Anyway, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I mean, the thing is, it's definitely perspective. She sees herself a certain way. She believes certain things about herself, like, oh, I'll never have pretty privilege. But clearly, she can earn it. I mean, she showed a picture, like, that's pretty, and all she has to do is be that every day. You can make yourself have pretty privilege. I mean, yeah. But again, like her, I mean, she's aware of how she's aware of like whatever she thinks of herself, but I think she's not aware that, hey, you don't have to see yourself that way. You don't have to see yourself as, oh, I'm an okay looking person. I mean, she says she's confident, but then she says, I'll never have pretty privilege. I mean, that's not confidence. I mean, that's the thing too. Like I've noticed with women, like, it's like in my perspective, I'm hanging out with a woman who's way more beautiful than I am, in my eyes, like, oh, she's so beautiful, but she doesn't have the confidence. And then I see my other friend, maybe in my opinion, she's not as beautiful, but she's so confident, she gets all the guys, and it's like really interesting that how it's like really just how you see yourself. And I've seen this too, where it's like, like I have a lot of male friends too that say, oh, she's not that cute, but like the other guy thinks she's cute. And it's one of those things where it's perspective and also just how you portray yourself. And if she keeps portraying herself in public, or on YouTube that doesn't have pretty privilege, and then she'll just get people to believe that too. Or you're like, oh my God, I feel that way too. But I don't know. I mean, it's definitely her perspective of herself. I mean, I think it's kind of sad because she clearly, like, to me, like, she has that potential to earn the pretty privilege, but she does. Yeah. She's not confident in herself, even though she says she is.
Okay. So, and we don't know, again, what is going on in her mind, because there's content and then there is the individual. So she's maybe, for all, let's just take this picture she's painting, because she may know, oh, there is that the fact that she thinks that it bothers her is, let me give my perspective. The fact that it bothers her is not a problem, because it's almost like saying, if I, fall down the steps, my knee shouldn't hurt. No, these games that we've called them so far actually have effects on us. And the whole point of trying to fly up to the mountaintop and be very self-aware and do mastery of subjective consciousness, yoga, meditation, so on and so forth, is to be able to kind of decouple our identity from these games. But let's not pretend like it's easy. Let's not pretend that, oh, being bothered by something is, oh, shouldn't you be a 5th grade Shaolin monk by now? Like, well, no, not really. We're just regular people getting pissed off by stuff. So the fact that it bothers her that she doesn't have pretty privilege, not a problem. If botheration is just kind of like something, okay, I noted that, right? But if it is something whereby there's a story attached to it, where now your current, recent identity, past, whatever, blah, 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 this kind of thing, it now permeates, in other words, if it becomes a spirit, right? If it becomes this spirit now, this consciousness, right, that pops into your head and makes you do things, right? Then that's when it'll be a problem, right?
Yeah. I mean, she's saying, oh, she has a problem with that, of not having pretty privilege. She's making it a problem. I mean, everything is, you make everything a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem. I mean, I don't know. Let's keep watching because I want to hear more.
I see. I see. I
think I'm just flying too high again, like you can choose to make it a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem.
Yeah. And the idea is so especially if you look back in your childhood, right? From where you were more, let's say, sensitive. Okay. Let's say when you're there, you're not the hot girl in high school. Okay. Now, how was that aspect? Let me ask you about that side of things. Now, were you able to pull any of these stops, or were you able to have other advantages such as not carrying as much? Right? Go ahead.
When I was in high school, yeah, I didn't care. That was just my advantage. But I mean, definitely, I had my moments where I would look at someone I'm attracted to, but then I see that person is attracted to this type of girl. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not that type of girl, so he'll never like me or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know, like I just didn't really care. And I didn't see myself as, someone who will never have pretty privilege. But of course, being young as I was, like, yeah, I looked around. I'm like, yeah, I wish I was like her. I wish I was taller like her. I wish I had her eyes, or because it seemed like everyone is just like in awe of it. Like, yeah, I'd like to experience that admiration, but it's just one of those things where it's like I didn't let that define how I'm going to move forward in my life.
Okay, good. I like the fact that you mentioned the admiration part, because the admiration seems to be huge when I went about with this whole pretty privilege, because pretty privilege is from a woman's perspective, right? So, and I think that the admiration part, and it makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women women are the adorned sex in our species. By adorned, I mean, like, for example, it's usually the male, right? The male peacock, for example, or the lion with the mane, right? It's usually the males that are pretty in other species, but in our case, it's kind of the other. And the one is, well, yeah, you want the male gaze, right? Which apparently is a bad thing, right? It's like, oh, I don't want the male gaze. Well, why come they're not approaching? I mean, they're not approaching me, but damn, right? The male. But anyways, that aside, so I'm glad that you mentioned that admiration part. But because let me ask you this, and you can confirm this or not. It doesn't really have much to do with outcomes in life, though. In other words, that just getting that adoration, number one, it's not necessarily going to lead to the kind of life that you necessarily want, big picture wise, right?
Right.
Even in the sexual marketplace, even if it's like, oh, I want to be able to have this kind of a family, whatever, that might not even be the best route to take. In other words, it may not be best to be a 9. Maybe it's best to be an adjustable 6, whatever it may be, right? but you don't get the adoration of a 9, though. Right. So that still is a problem. But number 2, that whole thing about, the type of woman that men want, because everybody, both sexes, that is, have a dual strategy, right? The dual strategy of mating can be described in many ways. One, for the men, is there's a difference between beautiful and hot. Can you intuit what I mean by that?
Beautiful and hot.
Yes.
So
the men out there in the chat, let me get a 1 in the chat if you guys know the difference, if you guys understand what I mean. There is a hot woman who's not necessarily beautiful, and then there's a beautiful woman who's not necessarily hot. And there is a difference between beautiful and hot. And there are 2 things that are being sought after here. Okay, it may be the Madonna whore complex or whatever, or the whatever, and there's something for women too. It's the more the alpha F beta bucks stuff, but you may not know that. But women also are looking for these 2 different things. Okay, they're like poles, and they don't necessarily exist in the same person, and we don't even want them to exist in the same person. Okay, we're not looking for the same person. We're not looking for one person, if we're being honest, and that's normal. I mean, we didn't make the rules of how the universe, how origins and stuff works, right? But we just play the game. We play whichever game we're playing. If we're playing the monogamy game, we'll play the monogamy game, right? There are other games to be played, right? But so I just wanted you to say, okay, to this idea here of there's only one type of outcome, only one. In other words, maybe you're not the beautiful one, maybe you're the hot one, or maybe you're the beautiful one, but you're not the hot one, right? And also maybe you want a family, maybe you don't. Maybe you want this kind of Brad, maybe you want that other kind of Chad, maybe you want this kind of guy, right? In other words, there's still, beyond the fact that you never get the adoration, there's still the kind of question of outcomes in life, and they don't have much to do with whether you're pretty or not. Anyways, go ahead.
Right. So back to, I guess, what you were going at in the beginning. So the admiration, the adoration. Yeah. So yeah, when you want admiration, you want adoration. Like for me, it's like an instant thing. Like I want this instant gratification of, all the guys looking at me. So that just happens at that moment, but that doesn't, me having that adoration from these guys doesn't mean anything later on. It just means right at that moment, oh man, I feel good because all these guys are staring at me. But I guess for me, like if I, in that situation, then I feel like, oh, I have a lot of options, but that doesn't really mean like, okay, well, I have all these guys that like me. Okay. So that maybe I need to figure out like, okay, that's the guy I would probably want to marry, like that's the guy I want to have like a family with or whatever. But, like the adoration, like admiration, that's to me, that's just the instant gratification, but what does that lead to later on, and it sounds like with her, she obviously craves that from certain type of men, because as she said in a video before, she was like kind of talking about like, oh, like they want that kind of girl, not that kind of girl. But, she let that determine how she's going to live the rest of her life, which is, to me, that's sad. And she's not aware of that. And then back to the other question. What was your other question about difference between beautiful and hot?
Oh yeah. Oh, if you ever heard, do you know? Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like just the first thing I think about is when I think of beautiful, it's like you admire, like, wow, she's beautiful. And, like just the way she is and the way she presents herself and how she looks. Hot is like, and damn,
hot, I want to tear apart.
Yeah, exactly. Is that ever happened at the same time? Like, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if there's a beautiful hot privilege,
The beautiful hot, I think that's the one people should be coming after. I think the beautiful hot ones are just hiding and be like, wow, I hope they don't find me. Because yeah, that beautiful hot nexus, that is the explosion right there, where it's yeah, it all comes together.
Aspiration, right? Like that's the aspiration for the beautiful hot.
Exactly. And with women, it's more of on the arousal side versus the provider side, and that's where the men tend to split. In terms of, I want this kind of guy, and I also want that kind of guy. They tend not to be the same. No. The alpha fucks, beta bucks, they call it. But anyways, let's continue with this. I think shout out to Stefco for always giving us good, candid reports. Fair use.
Really no space sometimes just to say, ouch, like that hurts my. And especially for something as superficial as just the way that I look. So I wanted to take a moment in this video and talk about my experience in life, not having pretty privilege. And I really made this video for anybody that feels the same way. I know I'm not the only person. I've read articles online and I've seen comment sections where I know I'm not the only person. However, I know right now a lot of the videos on YouTube about pretty privilege are just people breaking down what it is, or people saying, hey, you may not feel like you have pretty privilege, but you do. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to be honest about my experiences. And yeah. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to pretty privilege is I want to talk about just the different things I noticed that really started to bother me that I'd never experienced just as a woman, because I don't have pretty privilege. So I showed you guys that picture earlier of me on my birthday. And that picture is important to me because that picture kind of set off this whole idea of wanting to make this video. I never before really participated in any of these stereotypical rituals of going out and dressing up a certain way. And that's because I discovered at a really young age that when I'm at the club, I'm going to be paying for my own drinks. I was not the type of woman that men would fight over, that men would really even approach. So early in my life, I was like 22.
Okay, we're going to invoke some prior knowledge from other videos in order to comment on what has been said so far. And if I could just, you may start whatever you want, but the last thing she mentioned there about not being approached, it's kind of in contradiction with, well, number one, just as a guy, I'm like, no, don't tell me that. Guys are approaching you. Like, not as much as her, and they don't look at like you the way to her or whatever, but a guy will buy, you can get your drinks bought for you if that's, they're not going to be falling over, yes, but I don't think you have that issue, right?
I think what kind of guy, I think she wants certain guys to approach her, but I'm sure she's approached by guys that she doesn't like.
Okay.
I'm curious what her type is. I'm like curious, like what they look like.
Travis Barker, remember?
Travis Barker. I thought it was
that in the other video.
She gets the Travis Barkers, but that's not her type. I think that's what I understood. Right?
Or was that? No, I think well, because I thought that, she wanted more like the bad Travis Barker type. She didn't want because if you look at her, you're like, oh, this is the Dungeons and Dragons crew. This is Bandcamp girl. But she did not want her crew based on, she wanted Travis Barker, but Travis Barker wasn't, and Travis Barker was busy staring at Tiffany. So anyways, any other comments on what she said so far on just I don't have pretty privilege, because she repeated, man, I don't have it. It doesn't feel good. I don't have it as a woman. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she has a certain perspective of herself and how society views her, but that's her perspective. I mean, again, like, I don't think she necessarily is like just an okay looking person. She has potential. She just doesn't see it in herself. And, again, like, we're in a society where we can earn pretty privilege. It's not something you just can't, like, maybe, you're born not as attractive, but you could bloom. She could still, get to that, whatever her idea of pretty is. I mean, what is pretty to her? I think, like, with that picture, clearly she has, I'm curious, like, was she approached looking like that, or were people looking at her looking like that? I mean, she just really has a negative outlook on herself, and that's a sad part. And she's just, I don't know. I mean, it's just, the thing is, like, so far with like her last video, I just feel like she's just looking for a pity party, but not really a solution, And for me, that's kind of annoying because, again,
So solution would be more like, okay, hey ladies, this is what I did, and this is what I did for my birthday party, and this is how I experienced this particular tool. It was great. Everyone was staring at me, almost like they do Tiffany, blah, 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 blah. And here is what I found out, okay? This does not really matter that much. That does not really matter this much, but this is actually more important. In other words, it's kind of that whole talk about, Jay-Z has this line, which I think everyone can recognize. Whether you are in a hoopty, as we used to call it back in the days, like, some beat down crappy car that you got for $300 driving through Rialto back in the day, and you're with whatever. Let's say you like to hang out with your buddies, with your 40s. Maybe not you, Joe. Maybe you're not hanging out at the park drinking 40s. But maybe you're me, and you're drinking 40s with your homies, and hey, you got a nickel sack of the good stuff, okay, in your hoopty car, or you're in a G6 with caviar and Cristal. There really isn't much of a difference, right? Mm-hmm. If these are, these are good times, these are your buddies, right? It doesn't really make much of a difference. Point is, there is a certain kind of perspective that is good for people whom have been on both sides to give, or people whom have a perspective, to give, to tell people, hey, that thing you're looking for doesn't really make much of a difference. But however, what the G6 does for me is it can take me to Europe just like that, and I can be able to do these deals. It helps me. Money is a tool that helps me to do more of what I can do. That way I can put out more albums, and I can influence more people, and I can do this and I can do that kind of a thing. So whatever kind of access you have, whatever kind of privilege you have, the idea would be to show people what matters about it, what does it matter about it, how they could hack, perhaps, rather than be on the page of it sucks not to have it, and I'll never experience such and such and such.
Yeah. No, I mean, she's blaming everybody else for her troubles, and she doesn't, she's not doing anything about it. Like, she's not building herself up. She's not, I mean, again, like, she clearly hates the way society is, but it's like, hey, you got to work on yourself. That's the only thing you can really change, is the way you see yourself, not the way society sees you or what you think society sees you as. But she's just,
yeah. Go ahead. Or I just wanted to, if we may, go back to the patriarchy thing for a second, right? Because we looked at it one way where we're like, is patriarchy necessary? Well, let's put it this way now. How does patriarchy contribute to the feeling of unfairness here and the feeling of not liking the way society is? How does patriarchy, because now, flesh out, if you will, that whole thing about, well, maybe they're able to get more jobs and because the men are the ones hiring them and so on and so forth. Because she did mention, right, that she cannot get certain kinds of jobs. Presumably, if beauty was not a deciding factor, then it would not be a problem. And beauty is a deciding factor because there are men in these positions, and there are men in these positions because it's a patriarchy. So any comment on that? Are you with her? Are you a sister, soldier at arms taking down patriarchy? Joan, come clean.
Oh, God. Well, the thing is, so she's using patriarchy as the reason why she doesn't have pretty privilege. So she's saying that men are deciding what's pretty and what's not, right? Because I guess she's like, oh, guys are not approaching me. So therefore she blames patriarchy, men in the society in charge of who's pretty and not, who's going to have the privilege of this job because of, me as a man. This is how I see you. I want you to have the job. But I mean, do I have anything against patriarchy? I mean, I don't really care about those things, to be honest. I just don't like to.
The man isn't holding you back. The man hasn't held you back.
No, no, I don't think that way. I just don't, I mean, maybe when I was younger, when I got caught up in this whole like, oh, I hate men, I don't need men, I'm better than men. I'm, like, no, I don't believe in that. I think men and women, they balance each other. They need each other. There's, reason why man and woman exist together, to be together and do something together. Because it's like, like you talked about this before, in nature, it's not equal. And that's just the way nature made us. And this is how, the yin and yang, like we complement each other. So I don't think there's anything wrong with men, I mean, yeah, there's men that like something's wrong with that individual, but like men as a whole, patriarchy as a whole, I don't really care,
Okay. Because, let's now talk about the ways in which one may perhaps even benefit or be a privileged one, because patriarchy does keep women out of the military. Patriarchy, in other words, patriarchy is the order that tries to perhaps over time and through tradition and would claim to have been aligning itself with our nature, right? That's what the claim will be. If that is patriarchy, then there are many privileges for women in patriarchy, including, it's almost like there are many privileges for women in patriarchy, but there's special privileges for even pretty women, right? And it's like these perhaps, well, the not so pretty women hating on the fact that, oh, but you get the extra specialty, we all get to stay out of the military, and we all generally can talk about protection, and we all can generally cry wolf, and we all, even though people are like, oh, women violence, well, most violence is against men for obvious reasons, right? So, but all that is true. But if you're also pretty, then I don't like you. Then it becomes a patriarchy thing, and it's like, oh, let's take down the patriarchy that gives me all these other things that I share with you, but just so you don't get to be looked at by Brad or whatever.
It's nonsense. Okay, so like if it was women deciding who's beautiful, I mean, I feel like women can be pretty vicious, when it comes to like women saying, oh, that woman is a 10 according to me, but that woman is an 8 according to me, but that woman, oh my gosh. Women can be just as vicious when it comes to who's into pretty privilege and not, with her too. I'm sure she has, her opinions of what she thinks is pretty and not pretty. And it's unfortunate, but women can be pretty vicious too when it comes to what we think someone looks.
Okay, well, let's continue. Fair use, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Stefco again, breaking it down, bringing the reports from the side of not so pretty privilege.
23, and for sure at 25, I decided I wasn't going to go out anymore. So all of my outings, all of my fun, like let's get together, all of those things happened at bars and pubs. A lot of the times places where I knew that nobody who I would be attracted to would be there. And I did that as a defense mechanism, right? I knew if I dress up and I go out to a certain place and I'm ignored, it's going to hurt my feelings. So I didn't want to do that. However, for this birthday, I decided, you know what? I've been watching YouTube tutorials for years. I'm going to lay a lace front wig. I'm going to do my brows. I'm going to get a dress off of Fashion Nova. Whatever you feel about.
All good so far, and I'll continue playing the video. The lace front wig, lady, that was a mistake. I think that what you would have done if you got that money and all that stuff, and it was going to be a special, would have gone and did a natural hair look. That is the that is the pinnacle. Your natural hair is the pinnacle. No, none of this lace front, whatever it is you did. So, anyways.
About Fashion Nova, trust me, I feel it too. I have thoughts, but outside of the clothing that they make that is meant to accentuate unrealistic body types, they have some beautiful and very well priced things as well. So I'll just say I'm not a huge fashion person. I don't have a lot of disposable income. I know there's places out there that I can shop and but for me, I went to them and I got this gorgeous dress. I'm going to show here. Loved it. It fit the theme of my party, which was mermaid because I'm a Pisces. And yeah, I felt really pretty that night. And I remember walking into the restaurant just feeling like, and my friend even got me like a little crown. And I remember walking into the restaurant and just feeling like, okay, like if anybody is going to notice me, it's going to be tonight wearing this. I walked in and there was a group of guys sitting down at a table. All guys looked like they were single guys. You can never tell, but they were around my age. So mid-30s, early 30s. And I walked in and not a single person turned around to make eye contact with me. Nobody budged. I was looking kind of around the restaurant, like you feel really pretty. So you're kind of looking just to see if anybody's, all eyes on me, that kind of thing. And nobody's eyes were.
Where did she go? I'm curious. Oh, I can't hear you.
My bad. Is that what you women are doing, Joan? Going around looking pretty and looking to see who is looking?
Oh yeah, I've done that.
Okay, good. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Again, that is the evolutionary strategy. That is what you should do. However, what do you think about the fact that she got dolled up, she showed up, but people still did not look? What do you have to say about that? The plan didn't work.
Where did she go? Curious. Like what? I don't know. Maybe
a gay restaurant. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe she went to the Abbey in West Hollywood and it's all like gay guys. I don't know. I don't know. She looked at that one table of guys, but did she look at any others? I don't know. Like she's just so focused on like that. Oh, that group of guys did not look at me, so I don't think anyone else is looking at me. That's what it sounds like. Like she just focused.
It's like, because perhaps let me just one kind of thing there, because you put on the clothes, but maybe the clothes have not really soaked into your psyche yet. Maybe you need to dress like this or dress at better, take care of yourself more for about 2 months straight and work out, blah, blah. Make it physical, mental, and everything. And then you're going to exude something else. that is A, going to be more attractive, and B, you're not going to care as much. Two things which tend to go hand in hand, right? When you don't care about stuff, right? All of a sudden, all the guys are looking, right? So I don't know. Continue.
Right. I mean, it's funny that you brought that up because that's exactly like what I think one of her solutions could be, is to just get pretty every single day and look at yourself in the mirror and admire yourself every day. And everyone's always talking about self-love, so that's her, she needs to work on her self-love and just get pretty every single day so that she can feel pretty every single day, like build herself up to the point where she's just like, wow, oh my God, like I can't believe how pretty I am and I didn't even know it. So I think that's a solution she can look into. I think she's just so caught up in this one moment. Oh, that table guys didn't look at me. This just ruined my night. Like, why did I get pretty for?
And here's another thing too. I don't know. Maybe so, maybe not. There is a difference because remember she mentioned even the crown, right? Almost like a long sought after quinceañera, for example, right? Or some kind of I wanted to be princess, right? And those things, like your quinceañera is at 15 and those things happen when you're younger for a reason, and they're part of a whole kind of a younger thing. Okay. Maybe not so much in your 30s do guys look that way, right? Generally speaking, it is true. Guys in their 30s are not going to be just turning their heads and looking at, it's just not how it goes down. Plus, sorry to say, she's not the hot 19-year-old, 19 to 22 or whatever. We all know what the peak of sexual market value is for women, and let's not pretend like we don't, right? Pretty privilege aside, right? Even so what do you see any aspect to that, the age aspect, the time of life aspect, that you're trying to get this crown and this look, but maybe that was 10 years ago?
Right. I mean, there's definitely, if we're talking about privilege here, there's the youthful privilege. Like, me being an older woman, according to certain people, right? Would I ever feel envious of younger women, right? I can see that, like I've had those concerns before as I approached my 30s, it's like, oh my gosh, like, the guys that I want, they're just going to want the younger girl because whatever reason. But at the end of the day, I noticed too, like guys, they change their behaviors in social settings as they get older. I mean, I don't know. I guess she wants to be looked at the way college guys look at girls, like no problem. They're just like, whoa. But I think guys like in their 30s and above, I think they're a little more conscious about how they stare. I don't know, especially nowadays, like, like it's so easy for women to think like, oh my God, he's sexually harassing me the way he looked at me. So easily triggered by like every little thing a guy could do. So I think I can understand that guys struggle to show, make their intentions known these days because everything's just kind of under a microscope. So it's tough, dating these days. It's tough. It's always easy to take things the wrong way. But back to, the question about, like the youth and all that. How old was she when she was her 25th birthday or 23rd birthday? I don't, that she was.
Oh, you mean this recent birthday she just had?
Or when she got pretty?
That. I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't recall. All right. But yeah, I mean, for sure, there is that insecurity that women have as they get older, looking at pretty younger girls, because when you're young and young with pretty privilege, it's like their energy is different, their confidence is different, and me looking at that's like, wow, like did I not have that before? But again, too, like the young and pretty, like they almost don't care anymore because they know they just get guys to look at them, so it's just like their confidence is just different because they don't care. Like, oh, guys look at me all the time, where this was her. She did, she thinks she never experienced that. So that just, unfortunately, now she just looks at it that way all the time.
And that is an interesting thing. Guys looking and that being powerful enough to, because you see that if that there is a downside to this privilege, right? Having pretty privilege or being pretty rich, if you will. And this downside is the affluenza downside, the spoiled brat downside, the side of not having the positive effects of adversity, right? Not having, because we know what we mean by that. And there is a thing where to a man, a woman at the same level with him, sexual market value wise, is always still a spoiled brat because of in the marketplace, she's still more valuable in terms of just the numbers thing than him in terms of what she can attract, right? That's why it's kind of perfect that women tend to be hypergamous because they want a guy who's at a couple of notches above in one way or the other. That's just, a man is supposed to be that kind of a thing, right? Not something you look down on, right? But anyways, so given these facts, it makes all these things rather complicated, I guess. And I would like to continue with what she's saying here, but because she was in relationships, she did date. It's not like she couldn't be in relationships, but there's this thing she's seeking, which again, I don't even think will change anything, even if she had. Right?
I immediately humbled myself and I was like, okay, well, maybe people are just trying to eat. Maybe these guys, I think that they're single guys and they're around my age, but maybe actually they're dads who get this one night out a week and they have wives at home and they're just not worried about me like that. Okay, cool. I will take all of my expectations and push them down, right? My friend walks in a little bit later. She's definitely lighter skinned.
Here comes the friend.
She is half Creole, Haitian, half white. And I actually, when I first saw her, I didn't even know
and she's light skinned
in any way as Black. Like there was no way for me to tell. I didn't see it at all. But she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm Black." She's of mixed race, and she dyes her hair blonde, or either it's naturally blonde. So it's tough to kind of be able to phenotypically say, "Oh, that's a Black girl." Like she definitely is somebody who I actually thought she was Hispanic. That's what I thought, and I know she's married to a Mexican man, but I thought she was Hispanic. She also has a decent sized chest, and she walked in and she had the girls out and, just her natural face, and she had her hair up in this beautiful ponytail. All those men that I like 5 minutes before had been like, "Oh, they're busy. That's why they didn't look at me." They were like, all eyes were on her, not even the dudes. There were people in booths or people, like everybody turned to look at this girl. And I said, there it is. There's pretty privilege. The ability to walk into a room and know you didn't waste one bit of makeup, one, hair roller, you didn't waste it. You're going to go out and people are going to notice. And she actually met her husband. I have a lot of.
You talk about the waste, the idea that it's a waste if you go out looking good, but no one is staring at you. Well, I haven't been harsh on this whole thing so far, but when it comes to certain kind of judgments like this, and this for me is an aesthetic judgment, and I think that's just silly. That's crazy as F, right? It's crazy as fuck for you not to understand the self beauty of aesthetic pursuits. When you master a craft to superfluousness, to extra, point being, the aesthetic, the master craftsman who makes those perfect benches. It's not about just the functionality of the bench, like, or the master swordsman or whatever who crafts the perfect piece of art. It's not about just the functionality of the thing. And also it's not about whom else may see it, right? Aesthetic pursuits are an outward manifestation of a deeper inner drive that we have to explore, to invent, to perfect, to create, right? Whether it be throwing a ball of yarn down the stairs as a kid or grabbing stuff and biting it or pulling it together, whatever it may be, right? So but now I know I ran up kind of halfway up a hill. I didn't go to the clouds yet, Joan. So you can I'm on a hill somewhere because I'm still in philosophy land. You were just going to the nothing matter. You're probably gonna pull out some religious text and say, "For you have the image of God, therefore none of these things matter." Anyways, so Anyways, you know what I mean. Any comment on what I've said so far, or what she is, you know?
Right, like her saying, "Oh, it was always the makeup." I mean, and all that nonsense that she has said. I think, I mean, just from my observations when, I was in the dating scene, I've had my, my moments where I felt super insecure about the way I looked, even though I got all pretty and stuff. But because I just did not believe in myself, I think people pick up on that energy. And, she was going in there hoping that guys will look at her. She's had this expectation, maybe in the back of her mind, the way she talks all the time. It sounds like she's probably just like, oh, guys are not going to look at me. They better look at me now that I'm like pretty. But, that's the thing too. Like I've noticed just being around women who, in my perspective, are very pretty versus, maybe not as this, somebody said like, like beauty's not equal according to the, was that like beauty is the eye of the beholder. And for me, like I've seen what I would consider like maybe she's not as pretty as this one, but because she was super confident, the guys just were drawn to her. Even the way she walked into the room, because she was just super confident. Her energy was radiant. Whereas the pretty tall, blonde girl, like, she's walks in like super insecure, and yeah, they don't notice her because she's giving off that energy that, she's not confident in herself. And just from my experience in the dating world, I noticed that guys are not turned on by, insecure girl. Like guys don't like that. I mean, I think guys pick up on that. Like, oh my God, she looks like drama. I remember I was playing this gig several years ago, and there was this one bass player. We like he was talking to this Asian chick, like this tall Asian chick. Like I thought she was really cute and stuff. And he was like, damn, she's hot. Like when she walked in, and I remember him like saying, like, I'm going to talk to her. So he went and talked to her, and, they were just, like kind of walking around. You remember the basement? Like they were just kind of walking around together during the breaks and stuff like that. And he even offered her his jacket because they went outside. And then me being curious, he came back in. It's like, hey, how did it go? What's she like? He's like, man, she is hot as fuck, but dumb as fuck. And I thought that was really interesting because it's like, yeah, she looked gorgeous, but then he was like, yeah, dumb as fuck. He's like, I did not ask her for a number.
Okay. So, and then that you licked your wounds with that. You're like, oh, okay, it's okay. I'm Smart Joan. I'm Velma or Daria or whatever. The glasses wearing bang having. Yay for us. Okay. But yeah, let's continue here, and then before we call this before we landing the plane over here, I think that perhaps we should kind of do a quick recap and see where we're at, and if there are any things we need to collect before we get to the finish line here, because we kind of first of all just kind of elucidated the whole idea of privilege and said that, well, the idea of having special access, special rights, if you will, granted to you is not crazy. And then you try to run up to the hills, and then I said, hey, how about if I were to choose, if I say make you choose, hey, black guy, or are you good? Would you be a black guy? Would you be a fat, pimply, ugly white guy? And you're like, these are choices that I have to make because of realities of certain games in the ground, right? Certain social games in the ground where privilege is accorded to certain attributes and not to others. So it's like, okay, cool, let's get in there. And then went into pretty privilege, and we talk about pretty privilege being at the nexus of the sexual marketplace, because that is the particular game that it affects greatly. Obviously, then it affects the economic game and so on and so forth. Because she did mention at some point in this that you can get rich with pretty privilege, obviously, right? If you're in the 10 range, which is almost like the impossible. And when it comes to standards, we know that Mount Olympus is not supposed to be attainable, right? But so 10, or it's an asymptote to be for the math geeks out there. You don't ever quite reach it. That's why it's the standard. It's perfection, right? But if you're all hovering over there, then yeah, you can kind of cash in on that and actually make money too. So it affects the economic game as well. Then there was this whole idea of, well, being able to have real-time judgment to look at the game and say, okay, there are different games that are being played. different privileges accorded. You just mentioned she's hot, but she's dumb as fuck, right? Different games, all within the social sphere. You can maximize it, right? Mm-hmm. Maximize whatever game you have, whatever lane you're on. Go with also where you get in, where you fit in, right? In other words, you're not the girl that turns heads in the restaurant. Mm-hmm. Because by definition, it's a rare girl that turns heads in the restaurant, right? You know, it's like anyone can bring in like, oh, but when this angel walked in, everybody is like, yeah, you know, because she's an angel, you know. I mean,
there's definitely a thing about like the unique look, you know.
Exactly.
People admire
exactly unique, yeah. Because she talked about all kinds of unique shit. I'll have blonde and have this and that. It's like, good point, very good point.
Right. You know, obviously, if someone looks like, wow, what is she? I don't know what she is. Like, you know, people want to figure that out. And that's something it's common. Like, I see that happen all the time. Like, people look because you're like, wow, I've never seen someone look like that before. And that's exotic a whole privilege. Exotic privilege, you know? I mean, I could probably go like, you know, to another country that's never seen someone like me that looks like me, and everyone's gonna look, you know, is that exotic or pretty privilege? I don't know. You know, I remember when I went to Germany like several years ago, I remember walking everywhere I walked, everyone looked. I don't know if it's because of pretty privilege, but it's because I just look freaking different. Like, you never see Filipinos in Germany. You know?
It's just Germans who were like, oh, this is a nice little lumpia treat.
Oh, God. Wow.
No treat for my little.
No, I don't know. I'm more pancit, you know, the noodles.
Oh, okay. Pancit. Pancit, sit on it. Anyways, but that is a fair point that you brought up there. How are we doing on time?
We've been going for an hour and 16 minutes.
Okay. So we're going to start landing things, and, you know, we're having a good time here. But again, the reason I also give the recap and the reason why we do this is for real-time reasoning skills, because it doesn't matter what the particular block is, right? That is this emotional bag that you have due to your identity, due to your ego blocks, or whatever it may be, right? It may be a privilege thing. It may be a other kind of identity thing. It may be a history thing. It may be whatever it may be. We came back to the ground and we acknowledge that it is real, that you do have to decide, would I rather be a black guy or that fat, ugly, white, pimply guy? Because you understand that they have these different disadvantages and different advantages. And you're like, okay, how do I weigh these things? And to not be sucked into unconsciousness. Mm-hmm. In other words, in order to be present is the idea behind all this. It's not to say, oh, look at that, you make that kind of mistake, I don't make that kind of mistake. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a pretty privilege or a white man holding you back, or you thinking or whatever it is that the consciousness / identity throws at you in its dark side, its turbulent side, its perturbance, and so on and so forth, perturbations. Then we all got to know how to bring real-time reasoning skills to bear. Right. And so to that end, which we typically do, we have kind of gathered along the way more practical things. Right. You have mentioned some practical things in terms of, well, I would look at this other attribute that I have. I would look at this other guy that I would notice that, oh, they do like this, but they don't like that kind of a thing. But how about that mountain you were trying to run up to, that higher place? So how about give us a flavor for the more higher up, maybe headier or spiritual answers to this, because, or, you know, or psychological answers to this?
Right. I mean, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You know, that's it's true. And the thing is with, you know, if we want to look at the whole spiritual aspect of it, I mean, everyone has a beauty within them. We're all born with something that is unique to everybody else. And you know, she just needs to tap into her unique beauty. Like, what is it about herself that she thinks like, wow, like, why don't people see this about me? But then at the same time, she needs to see it for herself. I think the problem is that she just lets society form her ideas. I mean, that's just the way society is, right? Because there's, society is just composed of all these different individuals, and, they all kind of have same ideas of something. And therefore, that's what your society is, with everyone agrees that this is, this is what pretty is, this is what not pretty is. But she is so caught up in this, the external validation, that she can't seem to see, find that, that validation she needs from herself. She needs to approve of herself first. She needs to accept herself the way she is. And then she needs to find within herself what makes her beautiful. She hasn't really said any of that. And that's a part of the self-awareness that she just hasn't developed yet, seeing herself and accepting herself, seeing what's beautiful about herself.
Shout out to Game Changer in the house for the super chat. And could you read that, Joan?
Beauty is the amount of people that want to be holding you. Oh, God.
Yeah, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I guess that is a good remix on it. The beholding you.
Yeah, I guess I'm beautiful if more people want to behold me.
More people want to be holden. Oh, yeah.
Beholden privilege.
Beholden privilege. Shout out to Game Changer. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not subscribed to Game Changer, go check out his channel, Game Changer 00100. Funny and intelligent brother out there. So I hear what you say when it comes to the beauty inside. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There is an internal depth that was not mentioned as part of her analysis in both videos.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're only looking at what she says. We don't know who she is.
Right.
But she's not told us about, when I teach those kids, because she says she's a teacher, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the light in their eyes, or I really love to break down math and blah, blah, blah. There hasn't been some kind of a thing where it's like, where is the internal spark, right?
Mm-hmm.
The internal generative spark. And then let me ask this, is it possible, because we already mentioned that not everybody can run up to certain mountain places. That's just a fact. Okay. But is it possible that some people just don't have that? Like, there isn't anything that she wants to, like, everything has to come from outside.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible?
To not find something within that?
Yeah. Is it possible? There's nothing in there. What if there's nothing in there, Joan?
Yeah, I find that hard to believe. I think there is something in everyone. They just don't know how to look for it, because they don't.
Oh, okay.
They don't know how to look for it. She has to go through. Maybe she just hasn't hit that rock bottom quite yet to, figure out that, oh man, I need to get myself off the ground, and it's, yeah. I mean, I've seen this happen with people before where they think they hit rock bottom and they still haven't changed. And clearly she's gone through enough situations where it hasn't helped her become more confident in herself. And maybe it just takes a certain type of life experience for her to realize that she needs to look at herself a different way. She's looking for everybody else to change the way they see her in order for her to change the way she sees herself.
I don't know, something wrote. Practitioner, is that true, or you just like, oh, she's actually married and she lives in Nigeria and this whole time she's a Nigerian scammer?
I know, right? She's just making
Shout
money
out. That's my sister right there. She's out there hustling, taking the dollars out of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, for all you know, because like that's the thing, right? Like people on YouTube, I find this a lot, especially with certain like female vloggers. It's always kind of like a pity party, and that's what draws their audience, because they want to find all the women that are just, like, this is how I feel, and I know there's other women that feel this way, and let's all just feel this way together so we can validate each other and how we feel. And again, like with her last video, I felt like she did not really provide a solution for any of the issues that she was talking about. It was just at the end of the day, oh, I found my label, therefore I'm going to live my life now according to this label.
Yeah. And the way she pointed out her friend, like, oh, there it is. There it is. She that's pretty privilege, and it will never happen. That particular style of being an exotic, whatever bird, like, she is taking the fine-tune she's a good, she's kind of discretized and chopped into many different fine pieces this idea of the gradations of, it's like, but like you looked at me, but you look, let me put it, okay. Is there always, okay, because I find this, okay, in women generally speaking, and I've not been with every woman in the world, believe it or not.
Oh. I know you're so secretive about these things. It's just like one day I'm like, oh damn, you're getting married. I didn't even know you had somebody.
I was like, this is just move, just I'm not trying to be secretive, but anyways, I see a certain kind of there is some kind of a way in which she wants to be looked at in some fantasy. Hopefully it's a reasonable fantasy. And by fantasy, I mean what we all have, right? We all have an image, right? Not, it's fantasy, ha, 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 laugh. It's like, no, fantasy is the pictures in your mind, right? That's what fantasy is. So there's that image, and some people are not self-aware enough, or if you have that image, or with anyone and that regarding that image, you need to be self-aware enough to know that image is not an attainable target, and it tends to also be a receding target. And to judge your current partner or your current whatever, your current particular, the feedback that the sexual marketplace is giving you, or whatever it may be, based on some kind of unattainable standard that you have in your fantasy, will cause you problems. You see, because futility is a beautiful thing if you just submit to it. Because I mean, let's go there. Right?
Okay.
I mean, you painted a beautiful picture of like, oh, there's the beauty and you too can be happy, and you get a car and you get a car and you get a car. Okay, Joan. But nah, she's not getting the car. She's not getting the heads turning at the table. But then there's the idea of, hey. Reality, futility, death, all that kind of good stuff, right? It's almost like you do the spiritual thing, but it's almost like, okay, you did the spiritual thing, but you're still like maybe you're in the Sermon at the Mount, or Buddha, those kinds of places, right? You're doing Jesus or hippie stuff. Let's just take it back to Yahweh and be like, hey, look, you accept how things are, and you better be able rather than Cain. In other words, you better be grateful. You know what I mean? You better not start complaining about, it's not fair to me. My sacrifices don't work. Look at Abel. He's getting all the hoes, probably. But it wasn't written that way, but I'm sure that, I mean, to kill the dude, I'm sure there was some hoes involved. But the idea of futility, reality, being itself, being a thing that you have to submit to. And if you don't submit to, it's like sitting down outside this towering wall that you can. It's almost like, imagine a wall that's a galaxy tall and about a planet thick, and you're like, there's no way you're going to. And then you sit down outside it, and you're like, and you think like, why would you ever sit down outside that wall like that? You know what I mean? It's like, just walk away. It's like the laws of physics. Like you just, at some point, not being depressed is accepting beautifully futility, right? Not fighting against futility. What you resist persists, and all of that kind of stuff, right? It's like that is at some point the end of it. That's where it all at some point stops, because regardless, it's gonna get you one way or the other. Whether we are all gonna get by the death one, gonna get got by that one. That's for sure. No one is leaving here alive. Newsflash, okay? No one gets out of here alive, okay? Everyone's gonna be dead, okay? Along with other limitations of all kinds, whether they be personal or internal or external, having to do with attributes that we have and the judgment of those attributes, so on and so forth. These things are all just part of reality, some of which is movable and changeable, some of which is not. And you just have to be like, hey, you better be grateful or you're going to hell, right? All that Jesus talk or the kumbaya is like, hey. Yahweh said, okay, you better be able and give me a good sacrifice and be happy and not be complaining and end up being bitter, killing your brother, screwing up the whole situation and causing all kinds of evil. But I'll give you the last word on that, since, I think this was fertile soil for us to kind of go in this idea of privilege, and also pretty privilege in particular. But go ahead, take it. You got the mic.
So last word. Are we doing the last word?
You know how it goes. I would claim that it's the last word, but then anyways, yeah. Last
word.
All
beautiful.
Take one.
Everyone, you're all beautiful. That's the way God made you. No, okay. So I think when you look within, you reflect on yourself. I think that is something that's very important that everyone does. Unfortunately, not everyone's capable of doing that. But at the end of the day, like, this is who, how you were born. This is what you look like. It's either you accept it or you don't. And if you accept it, I think that's the point when you kind of start to realize, like, oh, wow, like, why did I see myself this way? And if you don't accept it, you're going to move on with your life, never accepting yourself. And I think that's not really, it's a sad way to live. And so it starts with just not worrying about, I mean, it's tough. We all care what everybody thinks about us, especially if you're looking for, a partner. But at the end of the day, you need to focus on how you see yourself, because how you see yourself is going to reflect how others see you. If you're confident, people will feel that energy. If you see yourself as beautiful, people will feel that energy. And you have to worry more about how you see yourself than what everyone else, whatever else everyone, I'm like mixing up my words. But yes, everybody, like, everyone's going to have an opinion. At the end of the day, your opinion of yourself is what matters. End of story.
End of story. And I'm going to honor for the first time the commitment to the last word. Thank you to Blind Guy, his wife, their life. I'm going to play the round of applause now and address the super chat, even though I did not address it live back then. Thank you for the $20 super chat that you gave, talking about having to take an early night. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, one and all, for those who participated in the chat, and for those whom listened silently. So, privilege, the idea of going ahead. Well, you know what? We'll be back next week, and maybe we will continue. Okay, this, or maybe in 2 weeks, because next week, because we like to alternate this. We will breaking the third wall. Going behind the curtains right now. Taking you backstage. But basically, maybe we'll do something more on the financial and the business end of things next time, and then we'll come back to the psychological next time. Or maybe we'll talk about Kanye and how maybe Kanye is not so crazy. You know what? Kanye never shot anybody. Okay, didn't get shot, didn't get like all kinds of baby mamas pregnant, and then did this to them and do blah blah. Like, when you look at his actual doings, he's not crazy, but people claim that he's crazy. Right. And the people who have crazy lives, it's just, that's just this guy, that's just John Jones. That's how he is, and why is Kanye considered crazy? Not because it's not that ridiculous. He's weird, but many people are weird, right? And
I know. You're pretty weird. I mean,
I am pretty weird, because the thing is that what is Kanye saying that I have not said, for example,
right?
Other than the fact that he goes ahead and makes weird faces with it, also, but because all the cameras are on him. Like, for example, when he was on Ellen, I don't know if you remember the show when he was on Ellen's show, Ellen DeGeneres, and apparently was going crazy, but he just broke the camera wall, and was talking to the audience like they were actually there. Like, let's stop acting like we didn't wake up this morning and sit on our butts on a toilet somewhere and then drag our filthy heads over, and let's not act like we're not alive and we don't understand what the real deal is, whatever it may be right now, but which is be present right now, rather than, let's do daytime talk show game right now. And it's like, so anyways, I was about to end the show. I said it was.
I know. Okay, end it. Okay, you can have the last word.
Abruptly. That's it. Bye, everyone. No music or no. Let's give you an outro. Kind of abuse you like that. Give you all this bloviation, pontification, and long-windedness, and not even end with a good song. How rude. Let's go ahead and give the outro. Shout out to Joan on the drums in this particular track. Joan playing the drums. And until next time, peace out.
in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What draws behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.